And now I'd like to introduce today's special guest. Success in any field of endeavor involves some element of risk. As Wayne Gretzky once said, you always miss 100% of the shots you don't take. 3 years ago, our guest speaker and his company took what appeared to some as a low percentage shot from their own blue line. To investors, it looked like a very big gamble, one that had many shaking their heads and some heading for the door. But Luís Audet and COGECO, the purchase of Portugal's money-losing cable company, Televisão por Cabo, South America, for the equivalent of $660 million, was a calculated risk. They saw it as a good opportunity to open the door to a new source of revenue overseas. And while COGECO took a hit back then, the Montreal-based company bounced back with solid gains in the past year. Their Portuguese subsidiary is growing, and COGECO's share value continues to climb upwards. Canada's telecommunication industry is a crowded field. To grow takes initiative and imagination, qualities Luís Audet's father and COGECO founder Henri Audet displayed back in 1956 when he sold the family house to buy a CBC affiliate in Trois-Rivières. COGECO now has holdings in broadcasting, internet, voice over IP, and it's the second largest cable operator in both Ontario and Quebec. They continue to look for new markets in which to expand, both abroad and within Canada, just last week completing the acquisition of Windsor-based Maxis Networks. This willingness to look for opportunities that others might shy away from shows an entrepreneurial spirit and what Mr. Audet simply calls guts. That could be the key to growth for Canadian companies and not just in the field of telecommunications. Luís Audet is a graduate of the École Polytechnique du Montréal and Harvard Business School. He joined COGECO in 1981, working in sales and marketing before becoming president. He's actively involved in his community, on the board of the Canadian Cable Television Association and the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, among others, and works tirelessly raising funding for the École Polytechnique du Montréal, the Collège Jean de Brebeuf, and the Musée des Beaux-Arts in Montreal. We're very proud to be able to welcome Mr. Audet to our podium today as our guest speaker as he discusses how Canadian companies can find their way to prominence, not just domestically, but in the international market. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to our podium today Luís Audet, President and CEO of COGECO Inc. and COGECO Cable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have so aptly summarized my talk that, in fact, you may all go home now. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for your kind introduction. Distinguished guests, dear friends of the Canadian Club of Toronto, good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here with you this afternoon, and I wish to thank the Canadian Club of Toronto for inviting us to discuss international opportunities as we see them. In relative terms, COGECO Inc., through its subsidiary, COGECO Cable, has only recently embarked upon a more purposeful international development plan with the successful acquisition of Cabovizão, Televisão por Cabo in Portugal in August of 2006. Hence, I recognize that the title of this conference, Does Canada Have the Guts to Become an International Business Force, may sound a bit overreaching coming from a company such as ours, and I would agree with you. So please consider today's talk as a testimonial of what COGECO's experience has been in outgrowing its past business model to start building what we believe will eventually be an international success story. Just as a reminder, on April 10th, 2008, we published our second quarter results for the fiscal year, and most observers will have noted that they were the best results this company produced in its 50-year history, an anniversary which, as the chairman duly pointed out earlier, we celebrated in 2007. Sales for the quarter were up 14%, and EBITDA was up 25%. Hence, we've taken the opportunity to revise our guidance upwards, projecting sales of $1.1 billion to fiscal year end on August 31st next, and EBITDA, which we project to be $440 million, with record earnings per share and record cash flow per share. In fact, at $440 million, the EBITDA will have grown a tad under 19% compared to the previous year. About 20% of our EBITDA comes from Portugal and the rest from Canada. By the way, our results in Portugal today exceed the original business plan on which the acquisition was based. As you will also have noted, we recently disposed of our joint interest with CTV Globe Media in the TQS television network in favor of Quebec-based Remstar in a court-supervised proceeding. Hence, as a reminder today, COGECO is a 100% owner of radio assets and a 33% owner and controlling shareholder of cable assets. Hence, cable will be the main focus of my comments today, as it represents a tad below 99% of the consolidated EBITDA at the COGECO Inc. level. COGECO Cable has grown from a base of 25 basic cable subscribers in 1972 to over 1.1 million basic cable subscribers today, consuming 2.6 million revenue-generating units as of the end of last quarter, February 29th. We achieve this both through commitment to excellence in customer service and disciplined investment in network and new service development, or what we call internal growth. Through the years, we have superimposed external growth. That is to say that we have successfully acquired and integrated about 40 different companies within COGECO Cable. The combination of internal and external growth has made COGECO Cable what it is today, having enjoyed compound annual growth rate in sales of 16% since becoming public in 1993, as a cable pure play, with the commitment by holding company COGECO Inc. not to conduct cable-related activities outside of COGECO Cable. Through the years, as a matter of corporate philosophy, we've made it our duty to be profitable, pay dividends, and ensure, particularly through acquisitions, that we would secure adequate reservoirs of growth for the future. In fact, as early as 2000, our board of directors recognized that the potential pool of acquisitions in cable in Canada was going to dry out, and that our domestic market would eventually become mature, and resolved that we would start seeking international opportunities in cooperation with a well-known Canadian engineering services firm. At about this point in time, severe price cuts on satellite services by the dominant phone company and the onslaught of illegal satellite equipment imported into Canada through U.S. border cities served by our company created very difficult circumstances for us. It took us 3 years to adapt to these new competitive forces. For all intents and purposes, to make a long story very short, the pricing of satellite services below cost was ultimately resolved only through regulatory intervention when we were finally allowed to enter the phone market. The illegal satellite market, however, continues to be an unresolved situation, generally speaking, because the dominant phone company continues to use a technology that is compromised, and because there continues to be a lack of willpower in Ottawa to implement effective measures against satellite theft. Having learned to live with these two aberrations, we proceeded to scan many areas of the world and settled on Europe as a potential reservoir of already built, high customer growth prospect, cable systems for acquisition by COGECO Cable. Since 2004, we have had the opportunity to examine cable systems in 15 different countries and continue to do so on a regular basis. To date, only Cabo Visão in Portugal has met our stringent criteria of solid customer and EBITDA growth potential with the right balance between required future investment and price paid for the acquisition. And to date, we are pleased with the results and believe our shareholders are being well served. And this is where today's testimonial of our experience as a burgeoning international company starts to really be interesting, if you see what I mean. The mere rumor of our interest in Portugal in September of 2005 caused our stock to plunge 14%. Having regained lost ground in the ensuing 7 months where nothing happened, it lost again 28% right after we announced the transaction on June 2nd, 2006, to hit a low of about $20. Negative sentiment endured, and it took another 8 months of solid monthly quarterly results to double that price back up to $40, to such an extent that we actually completed 2 issues of subordinate voting shares in the months of February and July 2007, and this last one was done at a record price of $51. Why did our investors have to suffer those nerve-wracking ups and downs? Objectively, there was no reason, no need for all these worries and panic buying and selling. In the early days of our announcement, we were severely criticized by representatives of the financial sector and of the press on the grounds that they perceived us to lack the necessary ingredients for success. 3 months later, these same journalists were lamenting about the hollowing out of Canada and the disproportion that exists, that is perceived to exist between the foreign investment in Canada and investments by Canadians outside of Canada. Would you believe that they actually concluded that there should be more Canadian companies investing abroad to restore the balance to Canada's presence in the world? Well, on this last point, we actually do agree with them. But we also believe that a healthy dose of realism, entrepreneurship, and intellectual honesty are required. My point is that the need for greater Canadian involvement in Canadian business cannot be satisfied only through a limited set of experienced companies. My thesis and belief is that a lot more Canadian companies ought to get involved, possibly for the first time, if Canada is to become internationally significant in business. I guess this last statement really begs the question, what does Canada really need? What should we aspire to for our country? Canada's economy today is a success story, thanks to our forefathers, and thanks to the people who've decided to settle here and contribute to the growth of our country, and for which we are very fortunate that they did make that choice because they've enriched our pool of talent. With a gross domestic product of $1.4 trillion per year, Canada ranks 9th in the world, which, with a population of 33 million, you will agree with me, is absolutely remarkable. We are still part of the G8, even though Spain actually ranks ahead of us, which I presume is likely the recognition of the depth of our democratic roots. On the basis of gross domestic product per capita, we are in 3rd position worldwide. All this is to say that we are strong, and if we continue to work hard and drive productivity, we as a nation will continue to do well in the future, even if we lose a few ranks on the GX scale, which we are likely to do, of course, since knowing that China is in 4th position, you will be interested to know that Russia, India, and Brazil are respectively in 10th, 11th, and 12th place, not far behind. So we will lose a few ranks on that scale. Part of our strength rests on the competitiveness of our various economic sectors, including telecommunications. Competition ensures a constant flow of benefits, innovation, and price advantages to consumers. And at COGECO Cable, that is certainly what we strive to do for our customers, to provide them with the best-in-class services and personalized attention. And they reward us handsomely for that, both in Canada and in Portugal, where our high-speed internet services have been voted by consumers amongst the best ever. Our call centers in Canada have gained recognition by the Service Quality Measurement Group for the quality of our attention to serving customers well, and these best practices are now being transferred to Cabo Visão. Canada has a competitive, successful economy, and in a country our size, this translates into growth challenges once companies reach a certain size. And this is the case with our company, COGECO Cable. Competition laws designed to prevent the abuse of dominant position are good for any company and any country. But they, coupled with fewer acquisition opportunities that result from the relative smaller size of our country, mean that entrepreneurially driven companies must seek opportunities outside of their borders if they are to generate growth and profits for their shareholders while sticking to their knitting, doing what they know best how to do. And as we all know, experience has shown that attempting to do something other than what you know how to do is a lot more riskier than replicating what you do now know how to do elsewhere. Smaller countries such as the Netherlands and Portugal have had to do this earlier in their lives to continue building their economies in the 1600s. And most recently, the Scandinavian countries have used a similar strategy. And we at COGECO Cable take our inspiration from these examples. And this, I submit to you, is one of the goals Canada should aspire to: a strong, competitive domestic economy rooted in experience, innovation, capable of replicating elsewhere in favor of other peoples the success that they have built in Canada. In an increasingly open and interdependent economy, such as exists in the world today, where all players take up position on the international checkerboard, there is no alternative for a country but to be successful and that to involve itself fully. And this includes not only large, experienced companies, it includes also a number of smaller, in relative terms, entrepreneurially driven firms such as COGECO Cable. We have the prerequisites: experience, a solid domestic base, a solid balance sheet, the willpower, the desire to build where there is a need, where people need to be helped with what we know best: the successful acquisition, integration, operation, development of cable systems, and organizations that value customer service. To carry their know-how and earn profits abroad for their shareholders in exchange for serving these customers, Canadian companies in any industry need support and encouragement if they are to realize their full potential. Of course, when thinking about COGECO Cable, we are not talking about the well-established international players such as Scotiabank or such as Bombardier or SNC-Lavalin. But let me tell you about our experience, what we need and what we've been receiving. On the financial side, we foster strong banking relationships with an eye to international business. And we also need a shareholder base that can look beyond the quarterly results time horizon to support long-term growth and disciplined risk-taking. On the banking side, we have had exemplary support every step of the way, from prospection to due diligence to structuring right through to closing. Our banking syndicate today is comprised of 18 lenders, 10 of which are international banks. And except for a few very rare exceptions, our domestic banks have been there all the way and have played a leadership role, and we are grateful for that. Judging from the durations of our stock, that our stock has suffered in the last 2 years, we could say, and I will try to say this as diplomatically as I can, that it is only after the sell-side equity analysts understood our Portuguese acquisition that they became supportive of our efforts to build an international company. Initially, reasons for skepticism ranged from size to lack of experience to shareholders' desire for simplicity. We understand these concerns. To be sure, we've proceeded in a disciplined and prudent manner, and we are committed to continue to do so. We are also determined to continue to provide as much information as we can, as long as it doesn't jeopardize our competitive position in any country. But also, to be sure, the world has become more complex and interdependent, and with open borders, will continue to evolve in the direction of even more complexity. For Canadian companies not to adapt to this new economic reality would lead eventually to economic irrelevance and marginalization. We strongly reject this short-sighted view of Canada's role in international business. Does this mean that the level of risk will increase? Well, of course it will. In all sectors of economic activity is bound to become more diversified and more competitive everywhere. But this risk level is the natural complement of the search for growth and profits for shareholders. When carried out with judgment and discipline, shareholders should be supportive of companies that take the initiative and have the drive to continue building. We also depend a lot on governments. And in this regard, we really need their understanding and their support. And let me tell you that other countries have understood the importance of supporting their companies for the well-being of their own economies and of the imperative of taking up strong position in other countries and the world economy. These countries are supporting their international players, I can tell you. What do you think is the record of our Canadian government in this regard? Let me tell you about our experience, however brief. To date, we have found Canadian embassies and Foreign Affairs and International Trade Canada to be extremely helpful and supportive of our efforts and of the need to get ahead. And for that, we are thankful. Regrettably, we have found a very different attitude at the Finance Department. We were absolutely stunned to hear on March 19, 2007, that the Minister of Finance had decided to disallow for income tax purposes in Canada the deductibility of interest on capital borrowed to complete foreign acquisitions. Furthermore, in the name of taxation equity, federal authorities had decided to not allow deductibility of interest on loans eligible for deduction for tax purposes in other countries. Both of these measures are contrary to Canadian business interest. I can, on the other hand, perfectly understand the government's desire to curtail the use of tax havens to evade legitimately taxable income for Canadian companies. But removing deductibility of interest on loans acquired to grow internationally aims at the wrong target. Why? Because we're the only country in the world doing it, and we're disadvantaging ourselves. For what reason? The Economist Intelligence Unit of August 1st, 2007, paraphrases the minister, and I quote, Mr. Flaherty argued that Canadian taxpayers were effectively subsidizing the foreign operations of Canadian multinational corporations. He also criticized Canadian firms for shifting Canadian jobs overseas and reducing business activity within the country. End of quote. Has Canada become such an insecure country that it now has to control how and where companies spend their money? Has the role and importance of international business escaped the minister's mind? Why are we adopting the very behavior that countries in Eastern Europe quickly jettisoned after the demise of the communist system? Quite frankly, this hurts Canadian companies trying to build a presence abroad legitimately for lack of domestic opportunities in their field of endeavor, or because of competition laws, which we totally support. It also disadvantages Canadian banks, because if allowed to stand, Canadian banks will no longer be able to follow their Canadian customers abroad with loans. And these customers, in turn, may have to borrow abroad from foreign financial institutions, which is okay. But Canadian banks are faced with the prospect of becoming only local domestic players in a world where their competitors are increasingly becoming international forces. Is this really the way to build strong international companies based in Canada? Obviously not. The idea that there are simple solutions in a complex world is, in our opinion, just not true. Things have to be carefully weighed and thought out, and that's what we at COGECO Cable spend our time doing, as I am sure you do. We should reasonably be able to expect the same from our government. We believe that in a free world, countries should be able to establish a reasonable balance. Much has been written lately about the hollowing out of Canada. The federal government has commissioned a study that concluded that this should not be a concern, but the government nonetheless created a review mechanism to screen investments by state-owned enterprises and investments in strategic enterprises, and that's fine. Every country does that, and that's good business, good diligence. I certainly don't intend to argue with the work of researchers, but I will say one thing, though. The loss of Alcan, Falconbridge, Inco are a tremendous loss to this country. We can already witness the disappearance of high-value decision-making executives. Some will be hired in other Canadian companies. Fine for us. Others will seek opportunities outside of Canada. Are we advocating interventionism? No. No, definitely not. In fact, quite the contrary. But, for example, it will take many more companies like COGECO Cable just to take up the slack. What we really need is a balance and equilibrium between companies lost due to free market forces and companies based here in Canada, encouraged to build and radiate abroad where they can earn profits thanks to our experience. We all know that no country can close its borders today. What we can do, what the Canadian government must do, is encourage and support companies with the will and dedication to build abroad. This is not what we are getting from the Finance Department today, and I urge the Minister to reconsider the Department's position on these issues. International activities bring about further benefits to companies that engage in them. Companies can immediately benefit from an awareness of different ways of doing things to gain more depth, more maturity. Companies can balance country-specific economic and regulatory risks and weather adverse situations when they show up in any given country. And believe me, they do. They do, and they have, as occurred right here in Canada for the cable industry when predatory pricing was prevalent from 2000 to 2003, for example, and it was tough then. Cable investments are inherently long-term investments, and we do seek to have a balanced portfolio to compensate for short-term fluctuations that will inevitably occur in each individual country. We believe Canada has key advantages which it can capitalize on to nurture an international business strategy. For starters, it has 2 official languages, which make things a lot easier abroad. Our official languages are 2 of the 5 official languages at the United Nations, and 2 of the 4 official languages at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, for example. Our national character, which values community building and good neighborly relations, make us welcome in virtually every part of the world up until now, but I'm not going here today, relax. We at COGECO and COGECO Cable are committed to building a great Canadian company, one that serves customers with the highest standards in Canada and abroad, one that generates growth and profits and value for its shareholders. Many of the people in this room have contributed to the growth of COGECO through the years, making it possible to celebrate our 50th anniversary just a few months ago with great pride, and I want to thank you for that. The building of COGECO is a labor of love, dedication, entrepreneurship, discipline, and integrity, about which the whole COGECO team is absolutely passionate. What aspiring international Canadian-based businesses need are enlightened Canadian investors who, while being mindful of risk, don't expect it to disappear, and a Canadian government that promotes and supports the Canadian business presence abroad. And I encourage Canadian companies and banks not to give up and continue their efforts to increase the awareness of the Finance Department, to change the non-deductibility of interest rules which make us less competitive on the international checkerboard today. Thank you for your presence here today and for your support, whether as shareholder, customer, or business partner, and have yourself a great day.
Thank you, Louis. I'm going to call John Duffy to thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Et, je voudrais dire merci à Monsieur Audet pour ses pensées. I think I should also add to thank you and to merci, obrigado, and thank you, something in Portuguese. I think there are 2 things that I want to thank him specifically for. First, to lend his voice so powerfully and add his voice to those that are calling for a greater focus on the interests of our world-beating Canadian companies is extremely important. This is a refrain we are hearing again and again, not only at the Canadian Club, but throughout the business community, that whether it's procurement policies that don't look past price and think about our economic development, whether it's tax policies that don't take into account the growth needs of the cable industry, whether it is ownership rules that keep our banks in their backyard when they should be world-beating. We really are not paying enough attention to this, and we need the debate to expand beyond these rooms and into other halls. I hope the television audience engages in this debate that Monsieur Audet has added so articulately to today. The second thing to thank him for is not only the words, but the example of COGECO that has really not only talked the talk today, but walked the walk in the face of all the challenges that businesses face, from skeptical investors and analysts straight through to the difficulties of entering a new market. So for your words and for your example, thank you, and may I say that I hope you'll come back again soon and add to those languages in which you should be thanked other ones, such as spasiba and perhaps umgawi and even arigato. So merci beaucoup, Monsieur Audet. Thank you.
Thanks, John, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. That adjourns our meeting. Have a great day.